Hello, my happy crumpers. Welcome back to Happy Crumpin' Wargaming. Today we are talking about the Custodes pivot. Are we done? So the Custodes saw dramatic changes in the most recent balanced data slate. And honestly, I think the data slate balances I think it's the best update they've ever done to the game. There are issues I have with it. I think Custodes were hit a little too hard, but were they hit too hard? Well, let's find out. How are we going to pivot? Before we get started, everyone, if you wouldn't mind checking out the like and subscribe feature here on YouTube. If you want to support me further, please join me on Ko-Fi, where you can support me financially, where I can keep this content coming to you every single freaking day. Or hop on over into our Discord, where we get to talk tactics and how to play the game Warhammer 40,000 as much as possible to the best levels possible. All right, so let's talk about it. What happened to us as Custodes players? Well, first off, there's no more 10-man bricks of Guardians, okay? It's gone. Everything in the entire army essentially went up. There were a few points decreases, but basically your Wardens, your Guard, your Terminators, it all went up by 5 points. All of our characters are like 20 points more. Trajan went up 15. He went from 145 to 160. All the Shield Captains went from 120 to 140. Blade Champ went from 100 to 120. There were just massive price increases across the freaking board. To compound it even more, there were core rule changes, which overall I think were fantastic for the game. I love the core rule changes with the way that free stratagems work, the way that towering works, the way that you can actually charge vehicles with a hull now. I actually love all that. But we did get hit in the crossfire of that, because fights first is no longer a battle tactic. It's not, which is pretty unfortunate. So now you can no longer use the fights first stratagem for free. Land Raider, interestingly, went down by about 25 points. Hilarious. Okay. It is technically the best Land Raider in the game now, I guess, because it's the cheapest. But then you have Sagittarium and Venatori went down by a little bit, which is a little bit cute. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video, like how impactful that may be. The Bite Captain, thank goodness, went up by 35 points because he was clearly the most OP model in the game. I have no idea what the heck this meant. This feels very personal. It feels like someone hated the Bite Captain from last edition, so they made this model that has probably never been taken to a GT in the entire edition even more expensive. Like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect us at all because no one's taking them anyway. Then, because of core rule changes, we essentially lost our detachment bonus. Now, the core rule changes that change devastating wounds are no longer mortal wounds and now just make it so that you can't take a save. That was actually very healthy and good for the game in general. And things that are good for the game are also good for us. However, it does kind of mean that we are left with a detachment that has more or less no point. Which, remember, guys, this is still Index Hammer, so take it with a grain of salt. Once we get our Codex, we're going to have lots of detachments that are going to be very, very valuable. And one of the interesting things, one of the conversations people were having was, how the heck are Custodes ever going to make use of any other detachment when our current one is so good? Well, now you don't have to ask that question because our current one sucks. So the new detachments that we're going to get in Codex release are going to be really interesting, and I'm looking forward to it, actually. All right. Then the big question that we have to ask ourselves, are we a bad army? Let's see if we can answer that. Let's move on. Okay, first off, let's check this out. Things we're no longer going to be able to do. We won't be able to dominate any primary by just tapping it with a unit. So previously, we were going to have that one Vexillite in every 10-man Guardian unit, and that means they're all going to be OC3, so we're 100% going to hold any primary that we're on, and the enemy is just going to be like, nope, we can't hold that primary, and we're going to win on primary no matter what they do. We can't do that anymore. Your 5-man guard squads, they need their equipment. They need their spears. They need their swords and shield. Whatever you're going to give them, they need it. You can't sacrifice a Vexilla on a 5-man squad because that just decreases their efficiency by so freaking much. So realistically, we're probably not taking Vexes in 5-mans. I'm sure someone will probably do it. I just don't think that's really the best thing. We're also not going to be casually dropping a shield captain in every single unit in the army because all of our characters are actually quite expensive now. They're not as good values as they were previously. I would argue they were already a little pricey, but now they're expensive, straight up. So you're not going to be just casually dropping a shield captain with every single army. We can't spam our free fights first anymore. So our old list design is not going to work. We are no longer a stat check army. We're not just going to take our 3 blocks of Custodian Guardians and just run them up the board. Won't work. If you try it, you'll lose. So that's okay. We just got to pivot. How are we going to pivot? Well, let's talk about the value of certain units. This isn't like an official tier list or anything, but we got to figure out the value of some of the units in our game. So Alaris. There's really no change to their value. They definitely went up in points. They went up in points by about 5 per model. And they were already freaking amazing, and they're still amazing. They're 5 points less amazing now, I guess, because they went up by 5 points, but they're still super good because they're going to be giving us rerolls essentially everywhere, because you're always rerolling wound rolls against your vehicle's monsters, and you're rerolling wound rolls against any unit that has a character attached. This is in contrast to our Guardian units, where our Guardian units are only going to be rerolling the wound rolls if they control the objective, which is a lot harder now because we don't have 10-man blobs with Vexilas. So Alaris don't really lose out on that reroll of wound roll thing, which is a really big deal. So I actually think their stock in our army may have actually even went up. They're incredible. Then we have our Custodian Guard. Their value went down. They went up in points, and they got punched in the face with the thing that says you can no longer take 10-man blobs. You're capped out at 5-man blobs. I think this was completely unnecessary. If they were going to increase points, okay, I still think that was a bad idea. But also limiting us to only 5 men per unit, horrible. Guardians just got punched in the face. It doesn't mean we won't take them, but likely you're probably going to see 1, maybe 2 units of these. They're going to be 4 or 5 mans and no more than that. Wardens, their value goes up, even though they went up in points. Actually, I think they got a great value just simply from the fact that now you can take them in a 5-man squad instead of a 6-man. I don't think we ever really needed a 6-man squad. I think a 5-man squad is perfectly fine. So now what happens is you're holding them in their 5s. Even though they went up by 5 points, the unit itself decreased in cost by 25 because you can only take 5 instead of 6. So I actually think Wardens as a 5-man is better for us than Wardens as a 6-man. Their value went up because Guardians' value went down. They're the same cost as Guardians, essentially, and they get to have the Vexilla without sacrificing their spear. So their value went up a ton. I'm a big fan of Wardens now. I like them a lot. Whereas previously in my other army, I wasn't running them at all. Now I will for sure be running Wardens. Virtus Praetors, they're awful. They're terrible. I don't care if they drop from 90 points to 80 points. They're still horrible, and their value doesn't go up at all with that price drop. It just doesn't. They're still awful, and I'm definitely not running them. Honestly, I don't know what point cost I would run these guys at. It would have to be super cheap because honestly, I think they just need to rewrite the unit. The unit just sucks now. Let's talk about the Venatari. Value up. This is actually very exciting, okay? They are usable now. Our Venatari are going to be seeing the tabletops for sure. Now I got to go rip off the pistols of my old Venatari and replace them with spears, unfortunately, because pistols are really bad in this edition, for Venatari specifically, but the spears are quite good. They get lance on the charge. They get free fallback shoot and charge. So essentially each Venatari unit is going to be like a free ceaseless hunter kind of. They also get rapid ingress for free, even if another unit has already rapid ingressed. So you can rapid ingress your Alaris, and then for free, also rapid ingress your Venatari, which will give us the ability to do really interesting pincer maneuvers and deep strike shenanigans. So I'm actually really, really high on these guys. I do think they're still overcosted. I think they come out to roughly 66 points per model. I think they need to be closer to that 60 point per model thing, but you know what? They're a new option that we have, and I like the fact that we can actually use them now. Then we got our Sagittarum. Their value actually went up because they went down in points. I still don't think we're going to take them because I still think they're bad. The reason why I think they're bad is they're the exact same profile as they were last edition, except they lost Assault and they lost their rerolls. In an edition where the armor and the toughness of everything goes up, which basically just means they're bad now. It doesn't really matter that they're cheaper. I'm still not running them. Some people might run them. It's possible. Realistically, it just feels to me that Sagittarum were made for one of the other detachments for Custodes. And I think when we get our other detachments for Custodes, we're going to find that the Sagittarum are not bad at all. They are kind of bad in this detachment. All right. Then we're going to look at Prosecutors. Their value went up because Exaction Squads are freaking gone. Gone, baby. Exaction Squads went from a 5-man unit to a 10-man unit. They're more expensive. There's no point you're going to take them. There's no point in taking them now. You're running Prosecutors again. So Prosecutors' value went up. Let's talk about some of our characters. One of these might surprise you a little bit. Trajan Valoris, his value goes down. I still love him because he's still awesome, and he actually still provides us a ton of value. One of the things, especially when you're thinking about armies such as Death Guard, Death Guard is going to have a ton of weapon skill and hit modifiers that's going to really hurt armies. Death Guard are going to be able to get Custodes hitting them on 4s. That is crazy, right? Because they're going to modify your weapon skill, and then they're also going to be giving you a -1 to hit. They are going to have Custodes hitting on 4s. This is awful for an elite army that has to perform. So Death Guard is actually going to be a really big problem in the meta. And it's just going to be a nightmare. So Trajan's going to be a direct way to counter that. along with countering basically everything else that he already countered. So his value proposition is exactly the same as it was before. He's just also 15 points more expensive. I don't think he's an auto-collude anymore, but he's still a good unit, and you're still going to see him in most of my list for sure. Shield Captain, his value goes down. Honestly, beforehand, I wasn't taking him, but I recognize why people took him. But at a base cost of 140, he seems pretty freaking meh to me. I'm not really high on him. Blade Champion, his value goes down, going from 100 points to 120 points. Might not be the worst deal, but the Custodian Guardians dropping from a 5-man squad. You can see my my wife back there trying to talk behind the video. But when you have the Custodian Guardian squads dropping from a 10-man to a 5-man squad, suddenly the Blade Champion giving a 5-man squad advance to charge is not nearly as attractive as it was giving a 10-man block, especially when those 5 men are also more expensive. So I think his value goes down. He'll probably still see play. And I might even still take one, but gone are the days of double or even triple of these. It's just gone. So, his value definitely goes down. Bite Captains. Hilarious. Alaris Captain. I actually think the Alaris Captain's value goes up. He, just like the other Shield Captain, he went from 120 to 140 points. But now, in my opinion, I think the Terminators are we rely on the Terminators for this army now. I think the Terminators are by far the best unit in the army, and you're going to need someone to give Ceaseless Hunter to that Terminator unit, because you need that Terminator shooting and fighting every single turn. And if they get tied up in combat, you need to be able to let them fall back, shoot all their awesome, devastating damage, and then go back into combat. I think it's a requirement. And simply from the fact that we need those Terminators to perform, we're going to need the Terminator Captain leading them. He's still going to be giving them the free -1 damage, which is very freaking important. So I think his value actually goes up, and I love him. I love him still. I wish he was still 120, but I love him. So then we actually look at Valerian, and Valerian, guys, his value skyrockets. I actually think Valerian is an auto-include in the army now. He is now incredible, whereas previously he was like an interesting kind of fun choice. Now he is an amazing value, simply because everyone else went up by so many points. But what does Valerian give us? Valerian gives us a Warden unit. So you have a unit of Wardens. They're going to be 3 wounds each, T6, -1 to wound if your strength is higher than them, so you're never really wounding them on better than a 4-up. Maybe you can get them to a 3-up if you have super high strength. Then, once per game, they're going to have that 4-up Feel No Pain. But what does Valerian do to them? Valerian lets you ignore 1 blip of AP and melee. Huge freaking deal. So in my teaching stream, I was teaching one of my coaching clients, actually, and we had him with Valerian running the Wardens against my Orc army. My Orcs put everything into this one unit. Couldn't kill him because the entire Orcs army is AP1, which means the Wardens stayed on a 2-up armor save. Couldn't get through him. And the army just completely broke upon them. If that was any other unit in the Custodian's army that was saving on 3-ups due to my AP1, they were obliterated. But because Valerian keeps them at ignoring the AP1, it's such a huge deal. He also gives you some interesting little options where he's got slightly more attacks, he's got slightly higher AP and strength, which is really good for the army. So I like him a lot. I think he is massive value now, and we're definitely going to be seeing Valerian on the table. Value of vehicles. Okay, guys, fine. Caladiuses are good now. All right. I said it. You got me. Previously, I was the guy who said Caladiuses suck. They're horrible. Everyone thinks that they're awesome, but you're wrong. Fine, you got me. Because of all the freaking nerfs, the super heavy-handed nerfs, my competition list, by the way, went up by 300 points with this update. So finally, Caladiuses are now valuable. I think they're pretty decent. I no longer think that they're a bad choice for Custodes. And I don't know if I'm going to run them, but I can see them being run, and I'm on board with them now. You got me. Land Raider. Weirdly, the Land Raider's value went up because now we have a 240-point Land Raider that's hitting on 2s. That's actually a really interesting proposition. Do we actually end up loading Custodian Guard with Trajan Valoris inside a Land Raider, rapid ingress that Land Raider, or just come in from Strat Reserve with that Land Raider, disembark so we get basically a 6-inch charge from Deep Strike with Trajan Valoris and Guards? I don't know, man. That actually sounds very, very appealing to me. I'm not going to do it initially, but I think I'm going to practice it a little bit. I think at 240, the Land Raider's value actually goes up pretty significantly. Then let's look at all of our Dreadnoughts. Value goes down. I dare you to show me any GT where people were seriously taking these dreadnoughts. I don't think it exists. And if it does, they probably didn't do very well. And then someone at GW just said, screw it. Let's make all those dreadnoughts, which are horrible because they have a movement of 6. They're no longer -1 damage. Let's make them worth more points when no one's taking them. Stupid decision. GW, horrible choice. I know I'm a big GW supporter. This was an awful choice, though. All right, so Dreadnought's value just goes down, baby. Stratagems. Now, well, because of the core changes where you can only use your free use stratagems on battle tactics, what are our battle tactics? Well, the core battle tactics is only the command reroll and go to ground. Those are the only 2 battle tactics out of all the core stratagems. Now, our core stratagems, or out of all of our stratagems, the battle tactics are going to be Arcane Genetic Alchemy, Avenge the Fallen, and Slayer of Nightmares. These are going to be the 3 options that we can use for free using our Shield Captain's free stratagem ability. Interestingly enough, they're also the 3 options that can be vected or made to cost extra CP from the enemy's units. So if we're taking the Calidus Assassin, for example, she can make one of these cost 1 more CP. But we can also use these for free. So that's what you have to keep in mind. If you're trying to use free stratagems, you can only do these now. You can no longer do the one that lets you resurrect a custodian. You can no longer do fights first. It's just not happening. Okay. Then here's an example army that I'm experimenting with right now. And as I experiment, this is all new. Some of these things will change, okay? But this is my initial thoughts. This is what I put down on the table that I've enjoyed. This is where I'm thinking that I'm probably going to be pivoting to something like this. Although, and remember, this could change. So first off, I'm keeping Trajan Valoris. He's a killer. He's a defender. What does that mean? If you watch my video, which maybe I'll link down below on how to build an army list in Warhammer 40,000, killer will always increase the killing potential of their unit precipitously. And it's not just because he's good at killing. He buffs his unit, and he does because he makes them ignore all modifiers. And then he's also a defender because he makes his entire unit much more resilient. Chances are I'm running him with the Wardens, which will activate that -1 to be wounded. But more importantly, he gives them the free fights first still, which is an amazing defensive ability. So he's awesome. I'm still taking him. I'm taking the Alaris Captain with the Ceaseless Hunter because of the utility that Ceaseless Hunter gives us. We have to have our Alaris Terminators perform because they're more expensive and they are still the best unit in the game. So we're still needing to take them, but our big brick of Alaris Custodians must perform. So this guy is going to be giving you free stratagem support, in the form of -1 damage, but he is also going to be giving utility support in the form of that Ceaseless Hunter and letting them fall back, shoot, and charge. Very important now. Then we take Valerian for the reasons that I just explained when I was going through why his stock went up. He's a defender. He dramatically improves the staying power of his Custodes. And one of the things that you're going to start noticing in the new meta is that melee is good now. There are other armies that are going to be doing melee. You're going to see Orcs performing better now because Aldari got toned down and Necrons are going to have to pivot. So Orcs are going to be actually a really big threat now. You're going to start seeing World Eaters being a threat because World Eaters got a lot of points buffs. They're going to be coming after you. You will see melee at this point, and Valerian stock went up a lot because of that. You're going to start seeing a lot of Berserks coming out just from the, whatever they're calling, the Stumpies, the Leagues of Votann. You're going to see melee units now, and Valerian is important. Okay, I'm running 2x4 Prosecutors. These guys are going to be for screening and for objective holding. We like them. They're awesome. And then we're going to be running a 1x5 Alaris. These are our damage dealers and the rapid response because from Golden Light allows us to teleport them across the battlefield. So this is the unit that's going to take the Alaris Captain. I will then still have a 3-man of Alaris, and these guys are for rapid responses. So do I need someone fortifying me over here to hold an objective? Do I need someone to go back there, grab a secondary? Do I need someone who can teleport down and snipe an enemy character? That's their job. Then I'm running 2 units of 5 Wardens. They are holding primary, and they're doing area denials, and they're doing deep strike screening. They are just my general, hey, good luck dealing with these units. They're also the only units that can actually stand out in the open now. Then we're going to have a 1 unit of 3 Venatari. These guys deal damage. They have Lance. So when they charge, they're going to be +1 to wound, which is a really big deal. Then they're going to be great for doing secondaries because they're fast. They start in deep strike. And the rapid responses because they get that deep strike and they get a free rapid ingress. That is such a big deal. Having 2 units in 1 turn that gets a rapid ingress really, really matters. Then lastly, I'm going to round it out with the Eversor. You guys know I love my Eversor. He's the assassin. He's a lone op. He's a damage dealer. He's a rapid responding unit. He gives so much freaking value to the Custodes, and his points stayed the same. So for 75 points, this guy is a must-take in my opinion. And then lastly, I am going to start including a Custodes. I used to not bring the Custodes, but I'm going to start now. She gives me another lone op. She gives me another deep strike denial, and she is a rapid responder. So I like the Custodes. This is the army I'm going to be experimenting with. Give it a whirl yourselves. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. Let's talk about my closing thoughts. This is my last thoughts on Custodes for the video for today. And there'll be more in the future as we're evolving. Allies have changed, all right? My opinion on what you need to be bringing as allies is different now. So that's going to be a different future video where I go through like all of the Imperial agents and we'll talk a little bit more in depth. But just because kind of as like a future reveal, I actually think Canis Rex with the towering changes got better. I know that might sound a little weird, but I actually think he became a more real choice for us. So there's that. We are no longer a stat check army, guys. If you play Custodes now, the way we played them a week ago, you're going to lose. And you're not going to have a good time, and you're going to think that we suck. We cannot just run out and say, deal with me anymore. It doesn't work that way. The 10-man Guardian squads that were, or I was running a 9-man for 405 points, and I was attaching a character to it. You cannot just stat check anymore. It doesn't work. Don't try it anymore. We will require very careful positioning. We are now going to be a finesse army. What you're going to start noticing is that the people who jumped on the Custodes bandwagons are going to drop off. Only the people who are high-level Custodes players are still going to be running Custodes because they're going to be difficult to pilot. Question here. Are we a bad army? We asked this at the beginning of the video, and here's the answer. No, we're not a bad army now. I actually really expect us to see us at that 48 to 50% win rate. Maybe a slightly negative win rate, but I think that's where we're going to see it. You're going to see a lot of the people who were playing Custodes because they were easy to play drop off because now they're no longer... I mean, I would argue that I still don't think they were easy to play, but they were really good. So now I expect us to see in that 48 to 50% win rate. Diehard players of Custodes or Custodes who are specialists are still going to be performing well. You're going to see Custodes winning RTTs. You're going to see Custodes placing well at GTs. I don't necessarily think you're going to see Custodes doing great at some of the super majors, just because I think some of the good players who are meta chasing are going to be pivoting to other armies. That being said, Custodes are not a bad army. It's just going to require more practice, more finesse. They're going to be less forgiving. So that's where we are probably until the next points update. I seriously doubt they're going to reverse many of these. That's 6 months from now. But we'll see. Who knows? Who knows what happens? Don't feel too bad if you're running Custodes. They're not done. They're not dead. It's just going to require you to perform at a little higher level mentally when you practice. If you want help with that, do not hesitate to contact me for either coaching services, or you can just join our Discord. You can join the free portion or as a member where we get to go in really in depth in some of these tactics, and you get constant contact with me where I'll talk about my crazy thoughts to you. If you want to do that, the best way to support me is you can just join the Discord, or you can support me on Coffee, and I'll drop a link below if you want to support me financially. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate you. Keep in mind, Custodes are in a fine spot. They're not dead. They are struggling a little bit, but we're not dead, and we will keep fighting. Happy corrupting my wargamers. Catch you later.